Welcome to our second episode and podcast of News with a View from Fat Cat Production. We are doing this podcast on January 7th, 2025. My name is John Costa, and if you've looked at our introductory uh, uh, video on our playlist, you will know what we're all about. A newscast podcast that looks at uh, the news. We get the facts from both sides of the media. Uh, we poke fun at it, but we're serious about it. And we are a conservative leaning podcast, but we do look at both sides of an argument. Uh, we, I strive to be as fair as possible. Some things you just can't be fair about. You just got to say that defies facts, and this is what it is. And again, you might not like what you hear, but it will be factual, and we all have opinions, and we all know what that is. And so we do it with an open mind, and welcome to our second podcast. We do this virtually unedited. Mistakes, flubs, whatever is going to happen, happens. The only thing that does get added are some fonts, some little statements, maybe a little correction. Last week was our first podcast, and I was battling a horrible cold, which I am still battling, but I'm feeling a lot better, and hopefully I won't be gulping for air like I was in the last episode. Welcome. As I said, my name is John Costa. This is my podcast. The views are my views. The facts are the facts presented by the media and by our government. When I say government, it could be an FBI release, it could be a police release, it could be, a person in authority, the president's words, senators' words. But we will use facts. We will brush our opinion into it, but we'll bring out the facts, and we'll also bring out the other side. It could be liberal, it could be progressive, it could be Democratic, it could be Republican. We're going to bring them out. So welcome to our podcast. First thing I'd like to jump into today is so far the FBI's handling of the New Orleans terror attack. We heard the first instance the FBI had reported through Aletha Duncan, the special agent in charge in New Orleans, who stated that it was not a terrorist attack, which was quickly corrected by the FBI, and of course the New Orleans Police Department. A lot of talk, should she be fired? Should she be, should she be demoted? Should be, listen, that was a fluid situation happening at the time. But she kind of fumbled the football here. Should she be fired? No, she should not be fired. Maybe reassigned, but certainly not fired. Her saying that it was their belief that it was not a terrorist attack at that time was, you could say at that time we didn't know. I guess an ISIS flag on the back of a of a pickup, might have been a clue, but yeah, I don't know. I don't know what they were going through at the time, and I certainly do not believe that she should be fired. And disciplined, maybe, a little re-education on how to handle situations of a breaking situation, as horrible it was. I mean, you had mass casualties, and at uh, you know, the same time you had an explosion in Las Vegas, and I'm sure this was the last thing the FBI wanted to deal with during an administration change, but I don't think the administration had anything to do with it. I don't think the FBI dropped the ball on. They should have known that Din Sabar, that he was a terrorist because he went to Egypt. A lot of American citizens go to Egypt every year. My wife has been to Egypt, and then also has been to Bosnia and Croatia, and also has been to most of the countries in Europe and in the United Kingdom and Canada. Does that make her a terrorist? Does that put her on a watch list? Maybe. I don't know. But certainly doesn't, or it shouldn't. I don't want people to being falsely looked at. It'd be interesting, in the next 7 days since this has happened, and going forward, to find out more information. You would think that if an American went to a country where there's, a truly radical element, and really Middle East, and that I would assume that the Egyptian security people would have seen, that this was an American, and what is he doing associating with these people, that they would have nudged our security counterparts to say, hey, you might want to take a look at this guy. I don't know if that was done. We don't know if this guy was on the radar, and just can't be in every spot everywhere. What is upsetting to me is that they have him, Jabbar, on video, roaming the city, leaving coolers unattended, and no one said anything. Coming from New York, and after 9/11, I can tell you, in Penn Station, if there was someone that left a briefcase by accident, the police were there in literally, a minute, and they'd get the people out of the area and they'd investigate it. And was it a pain in the ass? Yeah, it was. They'd close whole sections down, they'd stop stuff, but at the end of the day, I got home. My family got to see me. So I think we have to just hold our breath a little bit before we condemn the FBI. But we have seen that the FBI has been less than open about some things that happen. We don't hear about their successes. We don't hear about, the people that they do catch, and, whatever happens to them happens. We don't hear that. But we do hear when they fail. And, that's really might not be fair to do to them. You had good old Senator Schiff, who has come out and said this is why Kash Patel can't be in charge of the FBI, because we need a person who is going to uphold the values and have character and protect the nation against violence that took place in New Orleans. Well, we have an FBI director, Director Ray, who has all those qualities and experience. And this has happened. Is Schiff saying he doesn't have confidence in Ray? Because that's what it sounds like to me. And, again, this is coming from the same Schiff who said that they had absolute proof that Trump, conspired with the Russians during the Mueller investigation. Every time he could get in front of a camera, him and Nadler were up and down. We have the proof. We have the proof. We have the people. Dozens of people that are going to come forward. We have all the proof, and yet nothing. Nothing. So anything that this guy Schiff says to me, that I hear him say, yeah, I have to look at him with a jaundiced eye and go, this guy might not be telling me the whole story here, and certainly might not be telling me the truth. And so I am not a Schiff fan. I'm not a Nadler fan. I'm not a Pelosi fan. It's just these are some people that I really distrust. And there's people on the right side that I'm a little leery of. Well, just Lindsey Graham. A little leery of the guy. So I have my problems with Schiff coming out and saying these things, mostly at this time. We have an FBI that has a credibility issue, and I don't know if they should really be all that concerned about it, because the FBI, like any government super agency, they run under their own rules. So, does the public have to be in love with them? Nope. Nope. They do not. I do say that that I was a little concerned with Shamsad Din Jabbar, and my concerns basically are, how did this guy finance everything if he was in such financial trouble and two wives and listen, nowadays people having two wives and three families is almost the norm. So I wouldn't hold that up as the bar that I would go and look after him, but it'd just be interesting to know, where did he stay in Egypt? How did he fund that? How was it paid for? Was it paid for in cash? Did he stay at hotels? Did he stay at people's houses? And that's what I would be what I would want to know. And if the FBI, if this guy was on the FBI watch list, they can't watch every person every second. But you would think that if he was on the watch list, and they had him somehow on a flight that took him to New Orleans, they might have informed the New Orleans anti-terrorist unit that, hey, we have a guy here that's on our watch list, and if you see him, get back to us, because we're trying to put eyes on him. So who knows? Don't know. Way too soon. 7 days. Tragedy. Let's figure it out. As far as what happened in Las Vegas was that uh, you know a a soldier, and both of these were Army veterans or military veterans, and were they getting the help that they needed? The sergeant, the sergeant in Las Vegas was communicating with people about, his mental problems. But was he getting help for it? Was it kicked up? Was anyone made super aware that this individual was having such a hard time? It seemed a lot of people knew about it, but they didn't act. And I don't blame those people or family members who didn't step in, because who wants to, you know, get their loved ones, jammed up? And that's what happens. You get jammed up in the legal system when you have a mental illness, and then, this guy loses his military standing. He everything that he's worked for, everything that he's done for America, his career is gone. And so there's got to be some give and take, um, give and take with that, and looked at. Uh, Sergeant Levelsberger served this country, and I feel that we're not doing enough for our veterans. We're not taking care of them, and this goes for everyone that's been the president uh, during wartime and during peacetime. That we don't take care of our veterans, and I'm really hoping that President Trump makes that a super priority. He always did, but it kind of fell to the side because he was, during his first administration, he's constantly being attacked. Um, and again, I hope the Democrats give Trump room to succeed or to fail, but give him the room to do it. And one of the things that I would like to do is see our veterans taken care of. The other flip side of the problem I have with the information coming out of the FBI and even the military about Sergeant Leversberger, is that this comes from the same source that said that the terrorist attack wasn't a terrorist attack in New Orleans. So, again, yeah, do you believe one side and not the other side? Is there something here going on? I don't know. Uh, you know, I realized that the sergeant had mental health issues, and honestly, if anyone out there is having a mental health issue or know someone that's really needs intervention, and every family has a brother, a son, a daughter, a cousin, a nephew, like I said, an uncle that has, a mental health problem, call 988, or have them call 988. If you have suicide thoughts, call 988. You might have to do it a couple of times, but there are people that can help you. And, you say, call 988. Well, they're having mental problems. I don't know if they're going to respond logically. So, or the way we would think of logic. So, intervention, when you can do it, it's very hard, it's very difficult, painful. And the big thing is that when you do that, it becomes a legal issue. And the police have to intervene. And, you know, the police aren't mental health experts. You know, you call them, you call the police as a last resort. That's what you have to do. And they come in and they can't, you know, assess the situation to any great extent, except to possibly stop someone from causing injury to others or to themselves. And, you know, it's a bad situation. We got to do something with our veterans. We got to do something for our first responders. Um, you know, you just see it falls off by the wayside. We don't support our police. Um, you know, and, you know, one bad apple ruins the barrel. And that shouldn't be the case. One bad apple should be removed from the barrel, making that barrel nice and fresh and good. So, like I said, if you have a problem and you know someone that has a mental health issue, 988, you can go online, you can look these things up, crisis hotline centers, they're all over the country. And I don't know any of them that charge anything. So, you know, any journey starts with the first step, and to try to help these people, and it can get messy. Well, my next point of topic is Jack Smith. Now, of course, he wanted to release the evidence and his findings in the Trump document case. And Trump and everyone else, and you know, wanted it stopped. And the release of any of the information that he gathered, that Jack Smith gathered as a special investigator and special prosecutor, really shouldn't be released. The information and everything that he gathered under the definition of the law was unauthorized. He was not appointed properly and given the necessary credentials to collect that type of evidence and proceed with an indictment. And you'll have people say, well, that's a technicality. Well, the law is all about technicalities. And when you get down to it, there's no technicality. It should have been done. If others didn't do it, if you know, the Attorney General says that, well, if Garland was saying I was doing what other attorney generals have done, it's like a bank robber saying, I robbed a bank and these people were never caught, so I did the same thing. I should go free. Doesn't work that way. The information and anything that he gathered, anything, whether he presented it as evidence or held in his back pocket, is the fruit of the poison tree. And it should not be. He asked that the case be dismissed. Now, it wasn't dismissed with prejudice or, you know, and I get that. I understand. I'm not a lawyer. I could never be a lawyer. I have a soul. But the argument would be that it was gathered, you know, illegally. That's what happens. That would be the, you know, and it can't be used. It's tainted. And if he releases this information, then it really is. And it was just a real terrible showing an almost amateurish. And people said from the beginning that he wasn't given the proper credentials to go forward with this, and yet instead of pulling it back and going, all right, boom, we're going to go and we're going to have the Congress informed and we're going to have the Congress do this, and Harlan didn't. So it's a mistake that compounds a mistake that compounds, and it just snowballs, and we get to the point where Donald Trump, the citizen, used every right, every one of his rights that are available to every citizen. Now, he had the money to pursue it, and if he didn't have the money, he had the people behind him with the money to do it. And, you know, people with the best lawyers, they don't sit in jail. And if he didn't have the best lawyers to go after what the mistakes as a technicality, well, again, there is no technicalities in the law. You can go and have the law looked at. And in this case, it was looked at. And there was a process, and it was a process that was not done. So the law is fine. The execution of it wasn't. So I say that the evidence gets suppressed forever, and the case goes bye-bye. Or Trump can turn around now and go, I demand the papers back, and take the fight up that way. Which personally I would believe that Trump would lose. I think that, there are procedures that he was supposed to follow that were not followed. So that sword swings both ways on procedurals and technicalities. Works for him too. So I think he would lose that case of saying, well, I want those documents back. They're mine. No, they're the government's property. And, you can then argue to the extent of that. But in the end of the day, I think Trump would lose. So I'm glad the court stepped in and at least temporarily stopped it. And I think once Trump gets in office, it goes away. But if I was Jack Smith, I would not resign. I would not resign. And I honestly, I hope he does not resign. I would rather be fired and saying, I did my job and you didn't like how I did my job and you fired me, than resigning and then people being able to say, well, see, he didn't do his job. He knew he didn't do his job, and he left because he knew he'd be fired. I'd rather be fired. If I was Jack Smith, I'd rather be fired. And, hold my head up and say, hey, I was told to do this. I did it. And, okay, I can't say what has happened with the investigation. I might be, he might be stymied on it, but I did my job. And, they didn't like that I did my job and they fired me. So that's my take on what's going on with that. So the other thing in the news today that really is not news, it's just interesting. It is news. To the people that this affected, yes, it is news. The Washington Post today laid off the majority of their public relations department. Seems to me Jeff Bezos, who owns the Washington Post, amongst probably a million other things, seems like he's doing some early spring cleaning. The Washington Post lost about 250,000 subscribers. And on top of the 300,000 that I think left when the Washington Post would not endorse Kamala Harris for president. And you lose that many eyeballs in an industry that's already stressed, and they are. The newspaper industry is just about gone for the most part. Uh, you can't survive. So they let go of most of their public relations people that kept their managers in those positions to handle certain, I guess, day-to-day public relations. And but it was interesting that in the same token, they cut about 73% of their advertising department. Now, for a newspaper, they don't make their money on you spending a couple of bucks on their paper. You know, I haven't bought a paper in years. I go online, I get everything there, but you know, I see papers there about $3 a piece. You know, $10 for a Sunday paper, $12, which is, you know, can't believe it when you thought that, you know, we used to buy a newspaper for, you know, 15 cents or 20 cents. And I go, back in my day, but it was back in my day, and it wasn't that long ago. At least to me, it wasn't that long ago. But at 73% cut in the advertising department, how are they going to, what are they going to do? How are they going to make their money? And they're looking for, you know, super sensational stars and things like that, or whatever nonsense and that won't work. That won't work. You know, or we're going to have more of an online presence, and you'll go online and you'll pay a subscription service. But it's interesting because they lost this because of really their newsroom and how how that newsroom was being guided and what agenda top management had, the editorial people, the editors and things, and the working people that had no say in what was being done, or how the agenda of the paper was being handled, and what their agenda would be. That was about 4% of the workforce there, gone. And no one from the newsroom department. No one lost their job in the newsroom. That collected all this information, that wrote the stories, that, you know, and again, part of this whole podcast is to say that when a story is presented, and the Washington Post used all correct facts in their stories, but it's how they word their stories. Whereas another news outlet might say it was a, you know, a infringement of policies and will be subject to possible legal litigation. Another paper might say, in a bold step taken by such an administration. And both are reflecting a validity. And again, it's how it's being presented to its audience. Now, obviously, you lose 300,000 of people subscribing. Yeah, you lost a large amount of people, and you better figure out how you stop that hemorrhaging, or plug that leak, or the ship sinks, or the patient dies, and that's what I think is going to happen with the Washington Post. I think it's going to fold into something and, you know, come out and say we're morphing into this, you know, but I think the idea of a lot of these newspapers, where we were, as kids, stop the presses, or extra, extra, read all about it. That's gone. We have, just like myself, a million sources, and 999,000 of them could be wrong, or false, or presented in a manner that goes to their agenda. Of course, my opinions are always correct. Also, with the Washington Post, their CEO is under investigation in the United Kingdom for alleged phone hacking. I don't know what that was about, but I'm sure it had something to do with Princess Diane, or now Queen Diane or whatever. Not Queen Diane, but Diane. I'm sorry. I apologize. It probably had to do with the medical and health problems that the royal family is having. That's my take on it. That's the only thing I could see people wanting to investigate, other people about. So I find that interesting with the Washington Post, because the only other paper that I probably dislike more than the Washington Post is the LA Times, but that's my own opinion. And I do read, not the papers, I go online and I read a lot of their stories. And again, their facts are correct. It's just how they're being presented. The other thing in the news today was the Presidential Medal of Freedom. George Soros, who backed some of the most progressive district attorneys in our history. Who those district attorneys did not go to the courts and then the Supreme Courts to fight the injustice of the laws, but instead ignored them, or turned around and said, well, I'm going to just charge them this way, or I'm going to make a deal, or we're going to plea this down, or we're going to use, he didn't mean to do it, and he's going to get help where, it was this person's fifth time doing something. And so we've seen this throughout the country. It's just not Los Angeles. It's just not San Francisco. It's just not New York. You got Alvin Braggs, who took a hero, who stopped a person who was saying he was going to kill people and hurt them. And during the struggle to restrain him, the person who was making all these threats, who was high on a massive amount of drugs, died as a result of his threatening to attack people. And they charged that hero with first-degree murder. First-degree murder in New York, you'd have to wake up in the morning, tell someone, I'm going to go to the subway today, and I'm going to shoot and kill this type of particular person for no reason, just to kill him. And he got charged with that. And, now the jury found him, not guilty, and it's gone. Though now the family is, of course, through civil, it doesn't matter. You could be found innocent and still be ruined through a civil judgment. And I'm not going to just, I'm not saying this with any real point of view, but you take an O.J. Simpson, found innocent, well, not innocent, he was found not guilty, not guilty, and yet in a civil court of law, he was found guilty. So the same thing could happen to the subway hero. He could be forced to pay millions and millions and millions of dollars for protecting people. And you turn around and the governor of New York then decides to send the National Guard. Can you imagine sending the National Guard to protect to protect the riders of the subway during the holiday season? Well, what happens after the holiday seasons? We're on our own. You know, absolute madness, absolute madness. You have laws. You don't like the laws, go through the system and change them. But in the meantime, you got to obey those laws. And you had these prosecutors that turned around and really just decided, I'm going to disregard the law, and this is what I'm going to do. Crazy world. Now George Soros bankrolled a lot of these progressives. And I use the word progressives because I have no other term to use to describe them. I could describe them, but probably YouTube would not allow it. So I'm just saying that these guys and really bad people, not out for the general public, but out to destroy our way of life. And that's, I mean, as simple as I can get. George Soros was given this medal for one reason, to keep the donations coming in from progressives for the Democrats. And, you know, there's no other reason. No other reason. And Biden should be ashamed of himself. And, you know, we could segue into, well, Hillary Clinton also got the freedom of the Medal of Freedom because they said that she was the first woman elected, you know, that was a first lady or whatever, you know. I guess they forgot about Benghazi and her emails and maybe the fake dossier report. I guess they forgot about that. Had nothing to do with freedom, right? So that's just adding facts. Biden can give this medal to whoever he wants. I'm sure there was a committee. I'm sure the committee told Biden, this is the people that are going to get this and why. And, you know, Biden could go, you know, hey, I don't know if that's a good idea, but I'm sure, you know, Biden was just given his cup of ice cream and he was happy. The other item that I would want to talk about is you're hearing a lot of, you know, of President Biden giving out pardons. And every president gave out pardons. And every president not released, but might have given pardons, you know, like took someone off the death penalty and put them into life and, you know, in prison without parole, you know, yeah. To the depth that Biden did it, yeah, I think I mean, if you're going to use that, you know, it's cruel and unusual, you know, what about the other three that he didn't do that with? And I mean, those people do, believe me, everyone on that list, yeah, they deserve what they were going to get. And they were given a trial, probably multiple appeals, and it's, I would say there were very few people, but it does happen, that get railroaded. And we've seen that. We've seen that happen. We saw that happen with the Central Park incident. You know, the what were they calling it? The gang of kids, and they took him and really, uh, used horrible tactics to get false confessions out of these people, and could have ruined them, and did, and did. Uh, wilding, that was the term that they were used. And it turned out that the police, or the detectives or whoever, uh, yeah, forced fake confessions out of these young men. And it was a wrong that was righted, and the city had to pay monetarily. But there were a lot of people that went to their grave grieving, for their, thinking that, oh my God, my grandson, did this horrible crime, or my grandson didn't do this horrible crime, and yet he's sitting in jail, or he's been accused, or uh, that's a terrible thing. That's a terrible thing, and the death penalty it's final. You can't undo it. So I'm not a huge proponent of it. I understand it, and if they catch the guy, with a Dylan Roof, who murdered a bunch of churchgoers. I don't care if they're, what race they were. You murdered someone. I don't care if they're white. I don't care if they're black. I don't care if they're green. You murdered someone. You murdered a human being. You there are consequences for that. And you did it intentionally, and that's first degree murder. And you pay the ultimate price. You're given your chance to uh, defend yourself, and you're given all the opportunities, and in the end, a jury of your peers, or a judge, if you elect to go with a bench trial, that's it. And you do have a right to appeal, and you appeal, and when that appeal is gone, how many times do you appeal? I mean, I'm sorry, you want to use baseball, you get 3 pitches, you get 3 strikes. And I realize that the death penalty is final, and people that are convicted on circumstantial evidence and things of that nature, and then given a death sentence, yeah, I'm not too cool about that. But let's go now back to presidential pardons. Of course, the big news was, Hunter Biden. Yeah, what did I say? Big deal. Hunter had already worked out a plea deal with federal prosecutors that the prosecutors were content with. Pay your money to the IRS, and plead guilty on the gun charge and lying on an application. And I don't know, it must be 50,000 cases like that where you made a plea deal with a federal prosecutor, because most cases brought against individuals by the federal government hardly ever go to court. There is some type of plea arrangement, where they it goes from one charge, 15 charges down to one, and these other ones go away, and you serve your time, but you don't have to go to court. You don't have to go to a trial, and you allocute to the charges, and the prosecution then goes, we worked out this arrangement, and at first the court was okay with it, and then at the last moment the court says, no, we're not doing that, and he goes, we're going to sentence him. And you can't tell me, and again, I'm a Federalist, I'm a Republican, But you can't tell me that that wasn't politically motivated. And Biden is saying he would never, that he would not pardon his son. Well, that plan was never that he would do it. It would be in Harris, after Biden would not become the president because he stepped down. Then that was going to be Harris's thing to do. And I think that probably after Biden got in for a second term, he would have pardoned his son. He would have used the same reasoning. I'm not saying excuse. I'm saying reasoning. Because, again, you can't tell me that this was anything but a political hit on Hunter to get at Joe Biden. And, yeah, was it legal? Could you do it? Yes, you could. But when you make a plea deal and you have the consensus of the prosecutor who was the political side of it, yeah, that should have been it. You embarrassed them. You embarrassed the Bidens. You did what you set out to do, and they wanted more. And I'm sorry. I said from the beginning, if I was Joe Biden, I'd go, yeah, okay, yeah, you convicted him, but well, pardon, out the door. And but then he has to acknowledge that the same thing was done to Trump. Same thing has been done to Trump. And that's what Trump has been screaming all along. And did the Trump people use Hunter Biden as the sacrificial lamb to make their case? Probably. So, yeah. Them saw the breaks. But as far as presidential pardons go, every president has done it. Not maybe to the extent that Joe Biden has been doing it. And again, we're not at the 20th yet, so we don't know what else is going to happen. I would have to say that more than likely there'll be more pardons. And I know that Senator Schiff has said that the pardon for Hunter was wrong and stuff. And Schiff is the one that really needs a pardon. Pelosi needs a pardon. Green needs a pardon. Waters needs a pardon. And Nadler needs a pardon. Because these people actively distorted the facts about President Trump and initiated his first impeachment. And you can't tell me otherwise. The facts are there. It's right in front of all of us, and you could see it. But let's see what happens. The other less things that are happening in the news on the political front, it's a lot of going on in Congress, a lot of going on in the Senate, but that's all in between talks, and nothing's going to happen until after the 20th. My prediction is that the first thing Trump does is, of course, the January 6th, and I call them protesters, I don't call them rioters, but the nonviolent ones, trespass and things of that nature. When you put your hands on other people, you go from a peaceful protest into a violent protester. And there's consequences for your action. I don't care how mad you get. I don't care where your spectrum is on the political needle. You don't hurt other people. Uh, I think there's a lot of misinformation. I think where you have, well, the Capitol Police held the doors open for the rioters, and they called them rioters, and that invited them in. They were FBI. They were FBI people uh, in the crowd, inciting uh, the protesters and egging them on. I don't know. And Director Ray from the FBI was asked by um, the Senator John Kennedy, now of course not of the Kennedy family, out of Louisiana. And Ray turned around and said, "Hey, I can't discuss that. I can't discuss how we operate and how we infiltrate." And guy's right. Can't tip your hand, but you could ask for it in a special closed session, and amongst the judicial or segment of the Senate and or Congress, and find those answers out. Uh, that couldn't be brought up at trial because national security and some stuff that you cannot present as evidence. You're just not allowed. Uh, so I'd like to know that information. And that can change a lot. That could, yeah, but again, if you went violent against someone, if you hurt someone, and again, the only person killed at the protest was a protester by a Capitol police officer who shot uh, the woman climbing into the window. Uh, and then, of course, you had the police, Capitol police officer who died of a coronary incident. 4 months later, where they said that no, that was from the result of the Capitol riot. Well, unless coronary artery disease set in that 4 month period or 6 month period, then I would agree that that could have happened, but that was not the case. So there was a lot of false tears uh, uh, used. Uh, it wasn't a insurrection. If it was an insurrection, it was the only insurrection I ever heard of where there were really no weapons used against anyone. And was it scary for the people in the Capitol? Yeah, I'm sure it was. Um, but you have to look at the people that were in charge who could have done something about it and stepped in before it became a problem, and they didn't. And you know, Pelosi had said that she was responsible for some of that, and then all of a sudden she backtracked. And you know, uh, Pelosi is a master of the political scene, but she's not a good person. Uh, and there's very few good people sitting there. Most of them, are looking for a gotcha moment or a aha moment to forward their own political careers, and not looking at the people's problems. And that's why I said I can't take Bernie Sanders, but what I can take about him is that he's basically a very honest individual when he says, how are we going to do this? Well, I got to tax you. I got to tax businesses, and I got to tax these people, and I got to do this. But he at least comes out and says it. I don't have to agree with it, and again, I don't have to like what I hear, but at least the guy comes out and says it. Uh, I got to give him his props for that. Uh, Rand Paul. There's a couple of them that I like. I think there's some of them are, you know, crazy, but that's just the way things work out. Um, the uh, the next year uh, will be interesting. Uh, I don't know if there'll be a honeymoon. I doubt if there'll be a honeymoon. Uh, and if there is, it's going to be very short lived. Uh, I think some of the people that President Trump is going to put into offices are going to be lightning rods. Uh, and uh, I think President Trump has learned from his first administration where he went wrong, and where he went off the track. And hopefully, this won't be. And I don't think he went off the track. It's just that he went off what a lot of people felt was familiar territory, and he says things that is not what he's thinking, but he just says it, and it's disturbing when to other people that go, no, that's not what the president meant when he said that. And the same thing happened with how many times was they had to backtrack for Biden. So I mean, it happens. Uh, but it will be interesting. Uh, I'd like to see uh, Trump settle the Ukraine. We just can't afford just sending all that money over there when we have veterans that are living in the street, you know, and we're worried about the Ukrainian pensions, and yet we have people being wiped out here. Uh, not, yeah, not a good scene. Uh, the Biden made the mistake of thinking that uh, Putin would blink first when he warned him about going into the Ukraine, and then screaming up and down how we want to see the Ukraine in NATO, exactly what Putin feared, and Putin himself made a lot of this stuff self-fulfilling prophecies. Because once you go down those roads, if you burn the bridges behind you, what do you do? And hopefully, there's an avenue there that can be used to get both sides to the table. I do not think that Russia will pull back to its original borders. I think the Ukraine's going to have to realize, hey, you either take this settlement or, good luck to you, and, maybe you want to have a government in exile because we just can't afford to keep you going. Um, the difference that is going on in Israel is that the Middle East really does affect a lot of things that we needed at one time, which was oil. We don't need Middle East oil. So I don't care, and if we offend, certain countries. Uh, we do need them because of our military industry. Because what else do we produce but weapons? Really, honestly, what do we produce? So it's a balancing act. Uh, I don't know if Trump can scare Hamas into releasing the hostages. Um, I mean, you're talking about a people that have been waging war, what, like 50 years, 60 years, 70 years? I don't know. It's been longer. Um, I don't think they're going to worry about a 4 year president. Uh, and I don't know what Trump could do about that other than putting boots on the ground there. And that's the last thing I want to see happen. So if he has some secret plan and stuff, well, I hope it works. But I don't hold much faith for it. I see a plan for the Ukraine. Uh, I see a plan for North Korea. I see a plan for China, which uh, is very tricky, and the same thing with Canada and Mexico. We should just say, hey, listen, you want to have uh, your drug cartels over there and running around and doing everything. Boom. No Americans can visit Mexico. Can't do it. It's closed. You're a hostile state. We'll treat you like North Korea, and we're even though they are our biggest trade partner, uh, but if they're killing us, well, I don't know how good of a deal is that. You know, uh, you know, they're killing us, and they're killing our families. And I'm not saying I'm just with drugs and violence. So uh, Mexico really needs to be dealt with an extremely heavy hand. And you don't like it, sell your crap to someone else. And we're not doing it. And I'm hoping that's what Trump does. Uh, and you get Mexico to start, you know, doing what they need to do. Uh, some topics for tomorrow, which we plan on doing our first live podcast tomorrow. Um, I might do a test run in the morning just to make sure I got everything set right, um, uh, and I'm hoping we get viewers. I know this is going to take a long process, but we've had about 35, 40 people that looked already, and we'll see if they come back. Uh, the What I probably will be talking about uh, tomorrow is more on the pardons. Uh, the more on the economy. We keep being told that Trump is being handed a great economy. Uh, Maybe if you are in the stock market and you had your 401 in there and you're retired and have access to your 401, it's a great economy. Uh, but if you're working and you don't have access to your 401 yet, and you're trying to pay your bills and pay for things, uh, I don't know how great an economy this is. I mean, for myself, take a look at what I got. Uh, you know, it's not bad for a you know not bad place to live. It looks pretty good, right? Doesn't look too shabby. But uh, the working class people today, it's unbelievable. I wouldn't want to be out there, and I have. I worked at, helped a buddy out that was a manager of a Red Lobster. Then helped, not really helped, I fell into it, driving a shuttle bus for the Hilton Corporation and being, 70 years old. Uh, and I had a blast doing it. And then, I stopped and kind of wish I didn't, but because I liked some of the other retirees that were doing it. But uh, I saw some of the people that were doing the shuttle buses that were doing it because they had to. That they had no other means of income other than $700 or $800, $900 a month in social security. And even here in South Carolina, when I first moved down here, you get a beautiful apartment, two-bedroom apartment for $600 a month. And I mean, that included electric, and that was everything. And the place had a pool, and it was very nice. Now, that same apartment is about $2,200. And people are still being paid $8, $9, $10 an hour here. You can't do that. How do you do that? If you're lucky to have a 40-hour a week permanent job somewhere, everything became part time. We're going to work you 22 hours. So some of these people have three part time jobs just to pay their rent. And everyone has seen what has happened with car insurance. Uh, I I could say, here in South Carolina, where people, oh, it's the cost of living issue. My car insurance went up 22%. I had one claim for a window, a side window, which, uh, uh, the glass company I went to, uh, $980. Now, I don't know if that's what they actually got from my insurance carrier, but if I didn't have insurance, it would be $980 to replace a little side window. Not even in a power, it wasn't even a power window. It was a side panel window. 900, like $58. So, yeah, the insurance companies, they're going to have to raise prices. My fire insurance, wind and hail, because we're in South Carolina, uh, it's $4,800 a year. And you look at, my medical, Medicaid, Medicare Part B, uh, is costing me about $4,800 a year for my wife and I. And, I have flood insurance. Uh, so you start adding your insurances up, that's $15,000 a year in cash going out the door. Now you have to have car insurance. You got to have medical. You got to have, you own a house. Wind and hail. We had a hailstorm, and uh, my roof with some of the other debt was $28,000. $28,000. And okay, granted, it's a big roof. It's a big house just for my wife and I. But uh, you know, they paid it out. So when I start thinking, oh, all right, I lived here for how many years? And when I started off, it was maybe $1,800 a year. So by the time I get all the way up there to 20 years, I think we'll be here 20. We had the house built at least 19 years. So I probably paid about $31,000 in insurance coverage, but I got 28 back. So I think I got the better deal. But these are all costs that if someone's making 10, 12 bucks an hour, they ain't they're not living like this. I was fortunate. I had 35 years as a broadcast engineer for CBS Television. I worked with some of the top-notch people in the industry, geniuses, geniuses. The engineering at CBS was uh, no one could come close to it. The people that they had working for them in their engineering and development, amazing, absolutely amazing people. The head of engineering, the late Joe Flaherty, uh, really invented HD TV. And the other people that worked around uh, Dr. Flaherty. Uh, uh, I wouldn't say borderline genius, they were geniuses. Uh, and I'm proud to say that I had worked at CBS. Had a lot of fun there. And yes, I was a union member. I still consider myself a union member. I served on our executive board. I served as assistant to the business manager of the IBW Local 1212 out of New York City. I worked on contracts, you know, really with billion-dollar corporations for the workers. I worked with women's rights in the workplace. When I first started working in television, the, uh, the you heard producers and directors, which astounded me because I was shocked to hear it. There's no broads in broadcasting, and I remember thinking, hey, I have three daughters, and what happens if they want to go into broadcasting? You're telling me they can't? So, I got involved in our union I think I opened my mouth at a meeting, contradicted. Uh, Might have been Vinnie Barlucci, who was the business manager at the time, or Mike DiIso might have been the assistant to the business manager. And afterwards, they grabbed me aside and, asked me what my beef was. And I told them, and they said, yeah, okay, you got a beef. And, why don't you come down to the office and, let's talk about it there. And so I did. And it was very informative. And the next thing I knew, I was a shop steward. And instead of alienating me and, trying to justify what they were doing and stuff, they brought me into the fold and said, let us show you why we do it this way. And they said, you cared enough to stand up and be heard. Now let's see if you're really committed. And I was, and I ended up sitting on committees and then being asked to come onto the executive board, and then got involved with our credit union and was the president, was the secretary, ended up my career there as treasurer. And it was a multi-million-dollar credit union. It was a big credit union. Well, for us, it was a big credit union. I think at one time we had assets of about $16 million. And, I ran the day-to-day operations while doing my job at CBS in engineering, and then going into what was called master control, which is basically doing what I'm doing here with equipment, but with people that were so much smarter than me that, I was embarrassed to be in there. At the end of my career, these people just ran circles around me. But I still had a lot of fun. And it was interesting. I met a lot of interesting people, and it was a lot of fun. But that's just my history, a little background in who I am. And tomorrow, like I said, probably I would say about 6:30 p.m. we'll go live, and I know no one really is going to be watching it. But and it's really just really we're going to digital tape it and then replay it again. But it's just a good way to get going on live, and I will be doing a lot of daytime live, maybe an hour segment, hour and a half segment, um, and just putting my thoughts out there. Who's ever listening, listens, and we'll have the chat room. The nice thing with YouTube is the chat room comes up, and if I could see my monitor and actually read it, uh, I'll be able to answer questions, or at least say, yeah, this guy, look what this guy just called me. Uh, so, and I'm fine with that. You have 4 children, you're called a lot of things, so you learn certain things don't bother you. But other than that, I'm going to call it an evening. This was a little bit later than I planned on doing this. It's like I said, it's January 7th, and it's about 10:30 right now. Um, Tonight was Tuesday night, card nights at the recreation center on our property. So I was over there playing cards. Uh, and tomorrow, like I said, I'll probably be on in the morning sometime. Well, actually, it'll be in the afternoon, uh, and then again at about 6:30. And please take a look at our webpage. It's not up. It's up, but it's really not complete yet. Uh, and I'm working on it. Like I said, I've been sick the last 2 weeks, and then for New Year's, our daughter took us to Walt Disney World as a Christmas present. So I was in Walt Disney World sneezing and coughing on everyone. So hopefully I did not cause a pandemic. So I kind of fell behind on some of this stuff, but that's the nature of the business. Um, and maybe tomorrow I'll also go over to show you what equipment we do have. Right now, again, I'm just using uh, 2 cameras, a 2 camera shoot, uh, and really just segueing between the two. And as I end out my program, I'll probably go to what I call Still Store 2, and we'll put that up, and then I'll do a quick fade to black. um, I'm hoping my favorite TD, Joey D from uh, New Jersey, uh, who was technical director when I started working at CBS for the Cronkite News, and then Dan Rather, the news with Dan Rather, and then he went over to Master Control, and there was only, I think, 13 of us inside CBS that were Master Control certified supervisors, and I was proud to be one of them. And Joe Dwayne, oh, I don't want to say his last name, Joe D, and Danny S, and a lot of guys in there, Elliot, uh, really held my hand and helped me grow into the position. I had some wonderful managers in there. Uh, you know, Walter, if you're out there, I think about you every time. Mike M, and the head of the not technical operations. That was a when I started it, really I forget who the, maybe Al Klassen, and then it became Darcy Antonellis, and then for a while, I forget the other person, but it was Bob Ross who was there when I was there, and he was in charge of technical operations out of New York. And guy was again, absolute genius. And if you looked at him, you know, he loved to wear dungarees and just a shirt, but when he was at work, he had to wear a suit jacket. Um, and one of the forefront runners of taking uh, uh, it was a center called the Broadcast Operations Center (BOC), and then became uh, MDC, and that was run by a vice president, and absolute. He was an absolute genius in being able to take off the shelf items that were now being produced. Before that, everything had to be almost hand built at CBS until the digital age, where you could have a level platform and everyone worked on the same communication level. So equipment would talk to one another from other companies. And we had a vice president, Brent Stranathan, that was an absolute genius in putting this together and showing how the company could make money from it and be more productive. He was a no-nonsense guy. I wouldn't say he was a people person, but when it came to integrating the equipment, uh, he had a host of engineers that he could rely on, and the things that he was able to do, and how much productivity. And I was always a person that, with the union, if you can't have a job, you can't have a union unless you have a job. And the idea was, don't kill the goose that lays the golden egg. And we were compensated very well in our union contract and in our working conditions. But there were many a week where I put in 80 or 90 hours in a week, or I worked 68 days straight. And there were guys in the engineering and construction department where I originally came out of, where you could work 120 days without a day off. And they would, you'd have to go all over the country in support of sports or news, and also do engineering and construction for them. So it was an amazing job, and I was so fortunate that the late Jim Herschel, who hired me, saw the potential that I had, and one of the people that were hired with me in the same week was and I think it was 17 of us hired in like 2 weeks. We were taking the building from relay logic into not even the digital. It was still analog. We were still using 99% analog. And I remember the one engineer that was hired with me. We laughed. We were told we were the cream of the crop, and we looked at one another. And this individual, John, told me, he goes, the other people must have been coming in here in wheelbarrows or something, because we laughed. And that particular, every person that was hired with me, every single one of them rose up the company to, as high in the company in our union could go. And it was an amazing testament to Jim Herschel, who saw the potential in all these people and hired us. And always say a prayer for Jim. Certain people in your lives change the whole course of your life. I can list, other than your mom and your dad and your brothers and stuff, but in my life, I was very influenced by my father's mother and my father's father, because they lived in Brooklyn. We lived on Long Island, so I always saw them. But I could say about 5 people in my adult life that actually changed the way I thought of things. And 4 of those people were union people. And not necessarily high up union people, but just union people that I worked with, and we were on committees and things that actually forced me to be a better person. So when I hear people talk bad about unions, I go, well, then you might not have been in a good union. I was in a great union, and we were supported by the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers out of Washington, D.C., who, did everything from broadcast group to the people that get power to your house. And it was a great, great learning experience. And, I said I didn't start off, 18 years old at that job. And I often wondered, and I worked with some people that did start, in the mailroom. And it's the whole thing of working their way all the way up the company chain. And I don't know if that can be done today. I don't know if that experience is there anymore for any of us to come back out of that. So, in closing, I'm glad you looked at my still for about 10 minutes there. We'll be back tomorrow, and I'll probably have a show for Thursday and Friday too. It was a sad day today. We had to put down our cat of 21 years, and that's not Fat Cat. That was not the Fat Cat logo. The Fat Cat production is my granddaughter's cat, who's the biggest cat I've ever seen. And she is now the queen of the house, now that Moochie, who had 20 years here in this house, this was his territory, and now she is going to be the queen. And the king, long live the king is gone, now it's the queen. And she's about 8 years old, this cat, and she's a big girl. So we'll have pictures for her tomorrow. All right, thank you all. Appreciate anyone who watches. Please, you could leave a message for me on the site. Hopefully tomorrow I'll have everything up and running on the site so that messages can be left. So I appreciate it, everyone, and good night.